Sweet, yummy, sticky, juicy smoked char siu with flavour from the burnt ends. This recipe takes 3 days to prepare, but the effort will be worth your wait. For ultra juicy and melt in the mouth char siu, it is recommended to brine your meat and pick out a cut of meat where you have layers of fat and meat in a 1-to-1 ratio, such as the belly of the pork or the fattier portions of the shoulder butt. However, I am cooking at home and want to cook healthier. Thus, I will be using the shoulder butt of the pork that still has layers of fat running through the meat but still comparatively leaner. On day 1, with the cut of meat selected, we submerge our pork in brine overnight in the fridge. For every cup of water, mix in 1 tablespoon of salt. Brining will ensure that your pork remains juicy, having water retention without drying out when cooking. Brining also helps protein in meat to tenderize, giving you a tender mouthfeel. On the second day, we marinate our pork. We start with the marinade. In goes 4 tablespoons of finely minced garlic, a teaspoon of white pepper powder, 1 tablespoon of fragrant sesame oil, 1 teaspoon of 5-spice powder, 3 tablespoons of 玫瑰酒露, also known as rose wine. Try not to substitute or omit this ingredient, as this is the gateway to good char siu flavour. Now we add in 2 tablespoons of hoisin sauce, 2 tablespoons of red fermented bean curd with 1 tablespoon of the red liquid that comes with the red fermented bean curd. The red fermented bean curd will give the char siu a natural red tint and a great flavour. Add in 7 tablespoons of maltose and mix in the sauce well. Here we marinate our pork in the fridge overnight. And the third day is here. Third day is cook day. Our char siu is ready to be roasted after being infused with that beautiful glossy marinade. I set my char siu on a wire rack and fill the base of the pan with water so that the drippings of the char siu does not burn at the base of the pan, making cleaning much easier later. Reserve the liquid of the char siu marinade for later use. Here, I wanted to create some of the burnt ends of my char siu, so we popped the char siu into the oven and blasted the oven at 250 degrees Celsius. It took about 20 minutes for the burnt ends to develop. Once we were guaranteed with the burnt ends, turn the heat of the oven down to 180 degrees Celsius and continue to cook the char siu until it is cooked through. That was an additional 15 minutes of cook time for me. To take the guesswork out of cooking thick cuts of meat, it's great to invest in a cooking thermometer to ensure that you get perfectly cooked meat, which is also safer for consumption. Here I cook my char siu to at least 71 degrees Celsius. Since I am not looking for super tender meat, where the connective tissues of the meat breaks down, I stop my cooking at this point as my meat is on the leaner side. However, if you're working with a fattier cut of pork, you will want to render and melt the fat, else you will have to contend with chewy bits of fats while biting into your char siu. The trick is to use low temperature cooking. Low temperature cooking breaks down the connective tissues in fats. The additional step for those using a fattier cut of meat would be to turn down the temperature of the oven to 150 degrees Celsius and cook for an additional 1 hour and 20 minutes or slightly longer to get your melt in the mouth char siu. Once your char siu is cooked, we now want to add another important layer of flavour to the char siu, which is the smokiness. Here I have 2 tablespoons of cherrywood chips soaked in water for about 30 minutes. Here I drain the excess water. Cherrywood chips impart a sweet and mild smoke to the char siu. The reason for soaking the cherrywood chips is so that the wood chips can release smoke without burning out. We are going to make a wok smoker. Prepare aluminium foil, and then we make a shallow bowl for the wood chips and stack a metal holder so that the metal steamer with the holes can allow for the smoke to envelope our smoked char siu. We stack the meat on the metal steamer rack. We prepare some wet towels to seal in the smoke when smoking our char siu. We cover the lid and set the temperature to high. Once we smell some of the smoke wafting through the air, We turn down the heat to low and allow for the char siu to be smoked for a further 15 to 20 minutes. Once the char siu is smoked, we are going to make the char siu look glossy and pretty. Do this just before serving. We prepare the char siu sauce. With the remaining char siu marinade, we heat it up with 1 tablespoon of dark, thick soya sauce and allow for the sauce to thicken. You know the sauce is ready when the sauce coats the spoon. If it will coat the spoon, it will coat your char siu. We lather on that beautiful glossy sauce over the char siu. You will see that the char siu remains juicy. For better presentation, sprinkle some sesame seeds over the char siu to make some color contrast. Your char siu is now ready to be served. Bon appetit!